In a lab, a yolk is injected with a strange green substance. In just a moment, an exact duplicate emerges from the original yolk. Meanwhile, on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, iconic star Elizabeth finally receives her star. First year, fans gather around in support, but as time goes by, people start ignoring it. Cracks form, yet nobody bothers. Now that she's in her middle years, it's harder for Elizabeth to land roles, and she ends up hosting an aerobic show. One day, she finds the women's restroom out of order, so she uses the men's. While she's in the men's bathroom, network head and the president, Harvey, enters to relieve himself, continuing his phone conversation. He complains about Elizabeth's age, saying the show needs a fresh and younger face. After he leaves, Elizabeth steps out and looks at her reflection, thinking over what she just overheard. At lunch, Harvey fires Elizabeth, but he's vague about it since he's only confident in private. On her way home, Elizabeth gets distracted by seeing her billboard taken down, and her car is hit by another vehicle in a severe crash. Later at the hospital, the doctor tells her she's completely unharmed and can go home. When he sees the date on her profile, he wishes her a happy birthday, which makes her finally break down. After the doctor leaves, the nurse says he needs to run one last test and begins examining her spine. He decides she's the perfect candidate before handing her jacket so she can leave at last. Once outside, Elizabeth notices the nurse slipped a small package into her jacket pocket. She opens it and finds a flash drive labeled the substance with a phone number written on it. The note also says, "It changed my life." Just then, she's approached by Fred, a former classmate from her school days. He tells her she's just as beautiful as back then and hands her his number. At home, Elizabeth watches the flash drive's contents, which advertise a product called the substance. It offers users the chance to live as a younger, enhanced version of themselves, alternating between bodies every 7 days. Thinking it's a con, Elizabeth tosses the flash drive into the trash. Later that night, she goes to a bar and gets drunk by herself. But she quickly returns home and vomits because drinking is harder for her now at her age. Overcome with frustration, she throws a snow globe at a framed poster of her younger self. Afterward, she retrieves the flash drive and dials the number. A mysterious voice asks for her address and provides one in return before disconnecting. The next morning, she is upset to find an ad for a casting call in the newspaper stating they want the next Elizabeth for their show. After tossing the newspaper aside, Elizabeth checks her mail and discovers a black envelope containing just a card with the number 503. Then she heads to the address they gave her, which is located in a shady alley. She uses the card to open the door, which only goes up halfway and leads her to a very dark corridor. Eventually, she arrives at a room with deposit boxes, so she opens the one with her number and finds a cardboard box. Elizabeth returns home and finally opens the box, discovering a kit with the substance. There's an activator, a stabilizer, a switch, and special food. The instructions explain she must activate just once, stabilize daily, switch bodies every 7 days without exception, and remember she's one. After glancing at her body in the bathroom, Elizabeth injects herself with the green liquid. For a few seconds, nothing happens, until suddenly, Elizabeth feels immense pain and collapses on the floor. Her body writhes for a while as her pupils multiply and moving bulges appear on her back. Suddenly, a massive slit opens her body, and a complete human being emerges from her. Checking in the mirror, Elizabeth realizes she is now in a much younger body. When taking a closer look, she can see the original green eyes concealed behind her new blue. After vomiting some of the green liquid, the new body seals up the slit in the old body and injects it with the special food packs. The next morning, the new Elizabeth hears a screeching sound and notices her nose is bleeding, reminding her she must stabilize each day. Using the kit from the box, she takes spinal fluid from the old body and injects it into the new one, which instantly stops the bleeding and silences the noise. Afterward, the new body buys some nice clothes and attends the audition, introducing herself as Sue. Harvey is quite impressed by her and quickly hires her, but Sue will only accept under one condition: she can work every other week because she must care for her sick mother. Eager to have her beauty on his channel, Harvey agrees. During the following week, Sue enjoys being the center of attention again, and soon there's a new billboard featuring her face. She ensures to stabilize every day, although she never moves Elizabeth's body from the bathroom floor. At the week's end, Sue uses the change kit to connect both bodies, resulting in a blood exchange. Sue quickly passes out, and Elizabeth is active again, immediately feeling the pain on her back from the scar. She goes to the station, and Harvey hands her a box with her belongings, barely saying goodbye. Her week as Elizabeth is remarkably dull and boring, and she can't wait to become Sue again. Each day she ensures to stabilize the body, and another black envelope arrives when the refill kit is ready for pickup, necessitating another visit to the shady alley. When Sue returns the following week, she looks for a hollow wall in the bathroom and begins tearing it down, intending to create a hideout for the other body. She spends several hours working, and a neighbor comes to the apartment to complain about the noise. However, he quickly calms down when he sees Sue. She informs him that Elizabeth moved out and shuts the door in his face when he tries flirting with her. Once the secret room is prepared, Sue conceals Elizabeth and her large poster inside. Now Sue can genuinely start her new life. She hosts her show on television, and everyone adores her due to her incredible body, which she eagerly showcases. At night, she goes partying with other young people and even brings a guy home to have some fun. However, their enjoyment is interrupted when Sue starts hearing the screeching sound and her nose bleeds, signaling her time is running out. She rushes to the bathroom and opens the secret room to discover Elizabeth's body writhing as it finishes the last food pack. Desperate to return to the guy, Sue breaks the rules. She repurposes a stabilizer tube and injects into her own. As soon as she feels better, she returns to her guest, and they have a passionate night together. When Sue's clothes are unzipped, a mass of organs and blood spills out of her body. However, this is just a nightmare that wakes Sue in the middle of the night, and she completes the body exchange. Elizabeth awakens in the morning to find the mess Sue left in the apartment and a note from the man, stating that he'll return later for his bike. Elizabeth is horrified to realize that the extra hours she spent are Sue's consequences, and now part of her hand appears very old. She frantically tries to wash it off, but to no avail. She then calls the number on the flash drive. The mysterious voice informs her that there's no way to reverse this. When she tries to blame Sue for it, the voice reminds her that Sue is not a separate person. Later, Elizabeth cleans the apartment while watching TV and happens to see Sue on the show. The beauty of the young body irritates her, and she eventually turns it off. Then the neighbor knocks on the door again and tries to ask her out, but she doesn't respond. That afternoon, she goes to the alley for her refill box and hears a noise that suspiciously resembles the word Sue. Terrified, she immediately flees from there and ends up entering a diner. She keeps her damaged hand hidden in a glove. Suddenly, an elderly man remarks that 7 days feel like a long time. And Elizabeth notices he has the same birthmark on his arm as the nurse who gave her the flash drive. He winks at her and accidentally drops his wallet, which contains a card with the number 207. This confirms that the nurse was this man's young body created by the substance. He shares his experience and reveals that it becomes incredibly lonely to be alive, and each time it gets harder to remember that the old body exists and matters too. He asks if the young body has started consuming her, but she runs away in fear. Later, she bumps into the guy from last night who came for his bike. He yells at her before leaving, which is another reminder of how people perceive her in this body. Needing to feel better about herself, Elizabeth decides to call Fred and agrees to a date. She puts on her best clothes, but when it comes to makeup, she copies Sue's style. On her way out, she sees the billboard with Sue's picture and it makes her feel bad about her body again. Elizabeth grabs some accessories and adjusts her makeup to have a style that matches her age. However, when she tries to leave again, the sight of the billboard continues to haunt her. Once again, she goes to the bathroom and has a breakdown as she messes with her makeup and hair. In the end, she doesn't go to the date and ignores all the texts Fred sends her. The following week, while Sue is recording her show, she freaks out when she feels a bulge appearing on her rear. However, when she checks, there's nothing there. The team plays the recording on the big screen to check what happened, and Sue feels incredibly exposed, so she puts on a robe and rushes to her dressing room. Seeing the bulge again, she starts pushing it through her body until it gets to her stomach. Then she reaches inside through her belly button to pull out the bulge, which turns out to be a chicken leg. The next time she wakes up after the exchange, Sue finds the food leftovers left by Elizabeth, who has been eating a lot to deal with her depression. A furious Sue called the number to complain, explaining that she barely has any time to enjoy herself because of work while Elizabeth spends her days eating and watching TV. The voice's only answer is to remind her there's no she in you. When she goes to work, Sue is shocked to discover that the taping for her show has been canceled, and she gets very nervous when she's called to Harvey's office. However, he has good news. She's become so popular that they want her to host a New Year's Eve special. Obviously, Sue accepts and goes home to take more liquid from Elizabeth's spine, claiming she can't miss this opportunity. Her career is going so well that Sue continues to do this for several days, causing the hole on Elizabeth's back to get green and nasty. When Elizabeth finally comes back, she screams when she sees her body. It's very old and decrepit, and her legs can barely move. Elizabeth calls the number to complain about Sue again, and the voice offers to cancel the experience, which means Sue wouldn't come back. Remembering her new successful career, Elizabeth turns the offer down and keeps scolding herself for forgetting they're the same person. On the last night, Elizabeth tries to get up from her chair, but her leg won't cooperate, so she has to move it manually, which causes her a lot of pain. She grabs a recipe book and starts cooking great amounts of food while listening to Sue being interviewed on TV. Sue mocks the old show and Elizabeth, who furiously begins throwing food at the screen. She feels like the billboard is mocking her too, so she throws eggs at the window and covers it with newspaper. Before making the change, Elizabeth yells at herself in the mirror, trying to remind Sue to control herself. When Sue wakes up, she finds the apartment in a disgusting state and starts insulting Elizabeth. Hungry for revenge, she takes several needles of spine fluid to avoid changing again. 3 months later, Sue is still in control, and there are ads for her New Year's Eve show on TV and the billboard. One night, Sue brings another man to the apartment, but she asks him to wait while she goes to the bathroom. The hidden room is filled with trash, yet Sue continues to extract fluid from Elizabeth without cleaning up. The injection wound is now infected, and the liquid comes out looking dark and almost necrotic. Starting to feel dizzy, Sue calls the number and explains there's no more stabilizer fluid, so the voice explains she's drained it all out. The fluid needs time to regenerate, and for that Sue needs to switch bodies. She freaks out and refuses because her big show is the next day. However, her nose starts bleeding and she collapses. Struggling with the pain, Sue has no choice but to crawl back to the bathroom and finally do the switch over with Elizabeth. In the bedroom, the man hears a noise and asks if she is okay and comes to the bathroom to investigate, but Elizabeth locks the door before he can see her. Ignoring his questions, she looks in the mirror and is horrified to discover an abomination. Furious, she yells at the guy to make him leave. Afterwards, she comes out of the bathroom, and it's so hard to walk in this body that she keeps on falling. Once she reaches the living room, she calls the number and chooses to cancel the experience. Then she brings her old poster out of the secret room. The next morning, a black envelope arrives saying the last delivery is in the box. Elizabeth covers her body with as many clothes as possible, and on her way out she yells at the neighbor, who immediately hides in fear. She runs to the alley to get the box and brings it home to open it, finding one single syringe with a black liquid. Suddenly she hears a voice telling her there's no going back, but she ignores it and injects the dark fluid into Sue's body. However, she also remembers that tonight is the big show and stops herself before emptying the syringe, then Elizabeth giving Sue CPR, causing her nose to bleed. Seeing it as a sign, Elizabeth gets the change kit and gives Sue some of her blood, which wakes her up. Strangely, Elizabeth doesn't go to sleep. The women stare at each other in shock until Sue sees the termination syringe on the ground. She immediately freaks out and chases after Elizabeth, kicking her against her big poster before pushing her against the broken glass to try to choke her. Elizabeth manages to grab a vase and breaks it on Sue's head before running toward the bathroom. Sue tries to follow her, and when Elizabeth locks the door, she repeatedly kicks it to open it again. Next, Sue kicks Elizabeth once more and forces her to look at them in the mirror before she starts smashing her head on it. After multiple hits, Sue drops the body and Elizabeth crawls away, only for Sue to send her flying with another kick. This time the kicking continues for several minutes until Elizabeth is finally dead. Covered in blood, Sue realizes what she's done and breaks down in tears, but this doesn't stop her from remembering her show. That night Sue goes to the TV station, and at the makeup chair, she starts coughing and hearing the screeching sound. She runs to the bathroom to spit in the sink and a tooth falls from her mouth. To test the state of her body, Sue pulls 2 more teeth and they easily come out as well, which leaves her spitting lots of blood. After washing up, she meets with Harvey and the shareholders and offers a closed-mouth smile. Then she gets in the elevator and presses a button, only to discover her nails are coming off as well. At that moment, one of her ears lands right on her lap, but she has to play it cool because a man is entering the elevator too. Sue covers the hole in her head with her hand until the guy is gone. Afterwards, Sue leaves through the back door and runs back to her apartment, where she searches for the activator that was supposed to be used only once. Hoping she can make a new beautiful body, she injects herself with the green liquid and falls to the floor in pain as her back splits open. Once the process is done, Sue checks the new body on the mirror and is horrified to discover a disgusting deformed creature with Elizabeth's face on the back. This creature is Monster Elizasu, and after throwing up the green liquid, she puts on the show dress and jewelry. She also curls the few hair strands she has. Since it doesn't help much, she decides to destroy the old poster to make a mask that she glues to her face and puts lipstick on. Then she goes to the TV station and is delighted to find everyone welcoming her with praising words, but this turns out to be her imagination. Since the lights are off in the main stage, Elizasu manages to get on it without being seen. When the show begins, the lights are turned on and Elizasu tries to speak into the mic, but only mumbling comes out of her deformed mouth. At that moment the mask falls and she starts puking body parts, which everybody finds disgusting. A man in the audience is seen looking at her in shock, subsequently a woman screaming in horror followed by a man calling her a hideous monster, causing the rest of the audience to freak out as well. A bunch of guys surround her and pushing her around while calling her things like monster and freak. Elizabeth falls to the floor in tears, trying to speak to no avail. When she stands up, a man hits her with a baseball bat and decapitates her. However, her head slowly regenerates at the same time her arm falls off, causing a spray of blood that showers the whole crowd for several minutes. The entire room ends up covered in red and the people can barely move because they keep on slipping and falling against each other. Eventually Elizasu manages to escape the building, but as she's running down the street she falls and her body explodes in thousands of gory pieces. The only part still alive is Elizabeth's face, which crawls out of the pile to reach her star. She happily stands on it and remembers the old days until she melts away. The next morning, a floor scrubber cleans off the blood, a dramatic end to the movie. That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed watching it, please consider dropping a like, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel as it keeps us motivated to bring you more videos like this. Also, don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified about our next video. Thanks for watching.